All right, man. I've never, ever seen anything quite like these Miami Heat. I've always respected Jimmy Butler. If you look at my channel, I have a long history of praising this man. But number one, I didn't think he could sustain this level of unprecedented greatness for this long. And I damn sure didn't think a culture could be this strong in a star-driven league. 7 undrafted players, their third best player injured, no all-stars, and 2 games away from the NBA Finals. We've never seen anything quite like this. Today's video is sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs, it's unfortunately coming to its conclusion, but lucky for us, we still have some big games left. DraftKings wants to maximize the rest of your playoff experience, and they're here with an offer you really can't miss. All new customers have to do is bet just $5 on any wager, and they'll receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. A little lost on what you can do with that $150? Try DraftKings same game parlays, where you can combine multiple bets from one game into one big bet for a significantly bigger payout. If mobile sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry, they still have you covered. Try DraftKings Daily Fantasy, where they offer cash prize contests for basically every single sport. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use promo code Swishout. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code Swishout, only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Let's see if all that trash talking starts when it's 0-0 instead of 5-6 point lead. That's where it starts. That's the sign of a good man. If you can talk shit when it's even score, or talk shit when you're behind score. When you're ahead, it's easy to talk.
In 1999, we seen something similar to this year's Miami Heat, but it wasn't quite this. The Knicks, as an 8th seed, they made it all the way to the NBA Finals, knocking off the first seeded Miami Heat, knocked off Reggie Miller's Pacers in the conference finals, and then they ran into a dynasty in the making with Duncan and Robinson, and their run unfortunately ended. What made their run so special is the fact they did the majority of their damage without an older, banged up Patrick Ewing. In that special run to the finals, not only did they knock off the first seed, but they knocked off the player voted second in the MVP voting. Now, not to take away anything from that special New York run, but the NBA was a tad bit different back then. One, the NBA was in the midst of a 50-game lockout season, kinda weird. 2, the first round was the first to 3 instead of 4. And 3, the NBA had just lost their best player, Michael Jordan, so everything significantly opened up. What the Miami Heat are en route to do this year, mind you, I know it's not over. ESPN still inexplicably underrates this team. I understand all that. But what they're 2 games away from truly makes no sense. The Miami Heat in December, they were 3 games below 500. The Miami Heat at the deadline, they were fighting not to be in the play-in, which they ultimately were. The Miami Heat, after being the first seed last year, dropped all the way to the 8th seed this year. The Miami Heat rely heavily on 4 undrafted players. The Miami Heat made no significant moves at the deadline. The Miami Heat made no significant offseason moves. The Miami Heat had a net rating with all teams not even close to making the playoffs this year. The Miami Heat were one of the worst teams offensively all year. The Miami Heat are one of the smallest teams in the sport, so they got killed on the glass. The Miami Heat on paper have some of the worst contracts you can think of. The Miami Heat scored the least amount of total points this year. The Miami Heat lost their 3rd best player in the first game of the first round. And somehow their mantra is still
1, 2, 3. We don't give a fuck about none of that.
I made a video 3 years ago talking about how the Miami Heat were on one of the greatest, most unexpected runs in the history of the sport. And somehow this year, they're even outdoing that. The Knicks 24 years ago beat one player that was top 5 in the MVP voting en route to that NBA Finals. Not only is Miami en route to beating 2 players that was actually top 4 in MVP voting and a player that won 2 out of the last 5 MVPs, but they're also quietly, very quietly, I don't hear anybody talking about this, avenging the last 2 seasons and making a fool out of anybody that questioned the legitimacy of their run 3 years ago. In 2020, in the second round, Again, they took down the first seed in the conference and at that time, the current back-to-back MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of people, understandably so, questioned the validity of that run. Was it because they were in a bubble? Was it because they had 4 months off? Was it because Chris Middleton admitted he took 4 months off of basketball and didn't even touch a basketball? Was it because Milwaukee didn't have home court advantage? Nobody really quite knew. Even in the Eastern Conference Finals where they beat Boston, even Jason Tatum sounded like he questioned how valid were some of those performances in the bubble.
I ain't gonna say no names, but there was some people on the other team. I'm like, hold on, he don't normally play like that. Like, I'm like, he acting different in the bubble.
The year directly after making the NBA Finals, they met Milwaukee in the first round again and got swept. Jimmy Butler played some of the worst basketball I've ever seen him play, and that helped fuel the quote-unquote bubble fraud title that got placed on that organization. Last season, as a first seed against Boston at home in Game 7, they lost a very tight game, and you really can't call them frauds or anything like that for that specific loss. But again, a team they beat in quest for that finals appearance 3 years ago came back and avenged their loss. And now this season, they came back and they're currently chopping down the Giants in the most gritty, unexpected Miami Heat way possible. Different faces, different roles, yet they have the exact same denominator, Jimmy Butler. And not to mention, the two teams they're 2 games away from possibly beating were literally the 2 teams that were the favorites to win it all a month ago. I talked about it and raved about it like a month ago, but the legacy of playoff Jimmy has been padded even more. Since he's been in Miami, the player that has the most 40-point games in the playoffs is now Jimmy Butler. The player that has the most 35-plus point games is now Jimmy Butler. The player that has the best anticipation skills and is dead ass like Ed Reed with how he can telegraph passes and steal the ball and leads the league in steals with these last 3 years is definitely Jimmy Butler. The player that has the most 3+ steals games is most definitely Jimmy Butler. The player with, by far, and this is no disrespect to the Miami Heat roster, but it's just the facts with talent, by far the most inferior roster, yet he has the most playoff wins amongst stars, is Jimmy Butler, one of the only players to have a 60% winning percentage since 2020. Mind you, he's the only one that doesn't have a championship, mainly because he hasn't been on those rosters, is Jimmy Butler. Somebody commented under my tweet yesterday, and I have to bring it up because it was so facts. It's almost like Jimmy Butler injects that dog into anybody he runs with, and they match his energy. Against Milwaukee, where they took advantage of that golden opportunity, a team that was a subpar shooting team all regular season, they shot 45% from deep. Against Boston, where it's like they know they have to elevate their play. As a team, they're shooting 44% from deep, but their starting lineup, they're shooting 50% from deep. That's insane. Also, they're holding Boston, a team that relies way too heavily on how much they can outshoot you from deep, to 31% from downtown. Boston this year, they're a below 500 team when they shoot under 40% from deep, and they're 36-2 when they shoot at a 40% clip. So they rely heavily on how much they can outgun you. Also, in this is just like the most Kansas City Chiefs stat I've ever seen in my entire life. Shout out to Nick Wright for pointing this out. This Miami Heat team, this playoffs, they're 6-2, a 75% winning percentage when they trail by at least 10 points plus in these playoffs. The rest of the league is 14-59. That is insane. And for anybody that pokes this man Jimmy Butler, and I know it's competition, I don't really mean this, it's kind of just for the video, but can we please stop? Drew Holiday, the player that the players voted as the best overall defender by The Athletic, look at what he did to this man in Game 5. Again, like Michael Jordan said in that iconic Last Dance documentary, it was almost like he was foreseeing Jimmy Butler's career. It's cool to trash talk when you're up. Jimmy does it when he's 5-6 points down. Against Grant Williams, directly after Grant hit that big shot and decided to poke Jimmy Butler, he hit the majority of his game-sealing heroic buckets against Grant Williams and decided to trash talk when he was down 5-6 points. I don't know how far this team is going, but I've never seen a team quite like this. Kevin Love was picked up off the street. Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, and Max Strus, they're all undrafted and they're huge contributors to this team. Eric Spoelstra was homegrown and home developed, and he's easily the best coach in the league, and he's outcoached every coach he's faced in these playoffs. And this team is down Tyler Hero and, for what it's worth, Victor Oladipo, and they're 2 games away from the finals. Respect, man, respect. If you guys like this video, At this point, I don't even care what finals we get. We're going to get a great one regardless. The chess matches in both conferences is like, it's incredible to watch. Like I said, man, follow my social media sites, turn on post notifications, do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.